I'm Erin Deems.
And I'm Amanda McClugan.
We're the co-executive directors of Saving Grace Animal Society in Alex, Alberta. From a very young age, I knew that animals were going to be a big part of my life. I loved anything and everything to do with animals, from cats and dogs to cows to horses. I absolutely loved them. So I knew that I would love to work in a field that involved animals in any capacity. So I went to school to be an animal health technologist. Once I was in school, I realized that working in a clinic setting and being helping the animals that people were bringing into the clinic was not going to fulfill my passion. I really wanted to help the animals that weren't getting brought into the clinic and be a voice for those ones that needed a voice. So then I decided to go into the federal meat inspection. So I worked for the CFIA for just 2.5, 3 years doing humane handling and transportation. So I was working at slaughterhouses, and I did that for 3 years and realized I was trying to make change. I was trying to advocate for these animals, and it was just a real struggle for me being such a young person in kind of an old man's world. And on such a high level. So I went to provincial meat inspection to think that maybe I could start on a little bit lower level with different regulations and make a little bit of change. I did that for 2 years, and every time I would make a complaint, it would go to the Alberta SPCA, and I would get an email, a follow-up email as to how the complaint went. And I would always hear the response that the animals or the owners were educated or the producers were educated. And I kept saying to myself, how do you keep educating? At what point do these people get fined? Because what I felt was neglect apparently wasn't neglect in the eyes of the law. So then I decided I better become a peace officer. And I did animal welfare investigations for about 1.5 years. It was breaking my heart every day. I remember the first day I started, I felt like my uniform wasn't even complete because I didn't have a cape with it. Like, this was going to be the job that was going to be fulfill every passion of my life. Like, I was finally going to do it. And 1.5 years in, I just woke up and I said, this is not my passion. I felt like I didn't have the ability to save these animals. There was no places for me to find to get them to go to. There was no shelter to hold them overnight. And the struggles I was seeing day in and day out was just genuinely breaking my heart, and it made me wonder if I could work in any capacity with animals moving forward, and what my life would look like. So I quit, and I told my husband I'm just gonna take a leave of absence from work and just rescue some animals and decide their fate, and then see how it goes. So cash in all my pensions, I started rescuing. I gave it a name. My grandma had just passed away just a couple days before I decided to make the leap of faith. Her name was Grace. So we decided that Saving Grace was it worked in multiple different ways, and we stuck with it. And I said I'd do it for 6 months, and it really hit the ground running, and I put every minute and every breath of my life into it for a little while, and we've managed to grow really quickly thanks to also Amanda.
This right here is Elizabeth. You're fine. So she's a little standoffish. She is super sweet though once she gets to know you and warms up to you. Unfortunately, all the animals are a little bit caught off guard with having a camera out here today. They're very much used to just me, our volunteer Sandy, and my husband Raymond, who are kind of the ones who take care of these guys. So unfortunately with COVID, these guys haven't had the public attention that they're kind of used to. So it's a little bit weird when somebody new comes out here. They're all kind of caught off guard. Pretty much permanent. We tried to adopt her out. Nobody wanted her. You coming?
When I first started, our actual focus was going to be more on the farm animal side, as well as the animals that were going to be euthanized otherwise, so the more extreme behavioral cases. So I used the pension money to pay the trainers to train the animals in hopes that we could end up making them adoptable. And then alongside of that, obviously I have an extreme interest, given my history, in medical cases, so I started taking on a few of those. So I would use the pension money just to pay that off, and then hopefully recoup some of the costs throughout an adoption fee, and just at least kind of break even until we could kind of get the ball rolling and, you know, get our name out there and hopefully get some donations generated to keep it going moving forward. We've managed to grow really quickly thanks to also Amanda. We had met at the Alberta Spay and Neuter Task Force that I was volunteering at, and she was as well, along with her husband. In the summers, we would go out to the task force clinics, and we just kind of got to talking there, and that's kind of how she came on board. But you can tell your story.
I am Amanda McClugan, a co-executive director with Saving Grace Animal Society.
Okay, we've got Ken, Chelsea, Stacy, Skipper, and little Marshmallow and Black Sheep loaded, and we are off to Royal Oak to make some friends.
Unlike Erin, Saving Grace isn't, I would say, my baby, but I like to think of it as my adopted baby that we are co-parenting together. Before I met Erin, I had been volunteering in animal rescue for a couple years, and we first met each other at an Alberta Spay and Neuter Task Force clinic. I was frequently going to those, and she was as well. So yeah, we met there, and I just kind of started to follow her journey with Saving Grace and everything she was doing. And I just really started to fall in love with the concept that Saving Grace had. To me, it was just a little bit different than the other rescues I had volunteered with before. I remember sitting at one of the clinics at the very, very end. I think it was probably like 9 o'clock or so, and there was this one dog left who was barking at everyone, and he wasn't what you would call an easy dog to send to a rescue. That's kind of a hard dog to take on, and not a lot of rescues have the capacity to take animals like that on. I remember everybody talking about, what are we going to do with this dog and where is it going to go? And Erin's name continually came up. Nobody wanted to call her and ask her to take it, and I drew the short straw. But yeah, I remember calling her, explaining what this dog was like, asking her if she thought that she could take it. I would bring it home with me and get it to her. And I think she probably hesitated for like a half of a second before she said yes. And it was just situations like that where I knew that this was a rescue that was just committing that little bit of extra to the really hard animals that needed it. And yeah, I just really wanted to be involved. So yeah, I started off doing some fundraising for her, and the more we got to know each other, I think the more we just realized that our passions and our beliefs in the animal rescue industry really aligned, and yeah, it's all history from there.
So the first time we met was a clinic in 2015. And my first impression, I remember I was a peace officer for the Alberta SPCA, so everybody was immediately scared of me.
I was terrified.
Everybody was. And so I hopped out of a truck. We were at somebody's house returning their animal, and every time we deliver some food with them. And so we give these people food, and I was like, well, we're giving them food, and we fix their dog, and blah, blah, blah. And I brought the food out, and I set it at the bottom of these like massive set of stairs. And Amanda just kind of looks at me and is like, I'll take it to the top. And like picks up the bag and takes it to the top. And I was just like, how can you be so nice? Like, and it's really like that moment has never changed. Like, she's always been that person in our relationship and in our organization of just kind of like that softer side, and like brings out that side in me. Our relationship and building this organization together has worked so beautifully and so quickly, just because she brings that softer side, and she's had it since day one. And I kind of am the other side of the spectrum, so it really meshes well together.
Yeah, so the clinic I met Erin at, I was pretty new also to like the clinics and just like the rescuing aspect of everything. I don't think we interacted like a whole lot during our first couple clinics, but we kind of started to know who each other was. And then I was interested in going out to see her sanctuary for my birthday one year, and we were helping to build a playground for the goats. And I think when you can like see a person on more of like a personal level and like in their element and in a setting where it's not so overwhelming, you really get to see a different side of them. And I know that like everyone will say that, yeah, Erin is like a harder shell for sure. But there's more to her than that. Everyone's gonna make fun of this because they're always like, oh, whenever you guys talk about like how you met, it's like your little love story. We really like complement each other, I think, and I think that is why Saving Grace has grown so quickly and been so successful, is because, you know, there's two people working towards the same goal and we both know what we're good at.
In our first year, everything was quite slow. Amanda's first major project for Saving Grace was she offered to do an online auction for us. I say us, but at the time it was literally me. So she decided to do an online auction for me and for Saving Grace. So she brought in $3,000 and I was just blown away. Like I was like, I've never had this amount of money. Like think of all the animals we can save. Like what bills are we gonna pay off with this? Like this is gonna be fantastic. And then I think a month later, I just kept thinking about it and she just had her first kid and I was like, no matter what you do, like don't ever go back to work. Like I'll figure out a way. Like I'll pay you before I even get paid. I don't care. Like what can I do to make you like want to be on board with this dream? And she was like, no, you don't even have to pay me. It's fine. Like I love your dream and I'll be there. And like this is my dream too. I'm glad to help. So that's when we started getting into the not-for-profit, all of the paperwork behind the not-for-profit and charity status, all filed and all done up. And then we just started taking on more and more behavioral cases, and a lot of them actually did come from the Canada Animal Task Force. We would take on a lot of the clinic animals. And then once we started getting some of our own funding, me and Amanda just decided that it was time for us to get our own building. And that's when we moved to Alex in 2018.
Yes, 2018. Once we started to kind of get successful on the fundraising side of things and bring in some more funds, we knew that like the ideal goal was to have a shelter. So we chose to go with Alex because it was right in between where both of us lived. So it just felt like a good central starting point. We started to look at a couple buildings around the area. Rent is definitely a lot cheaper here than any of the big city centers. So that worked out really well in our favor. And yeah, in 2018, we were able to get the lease signed on the building that we are currently in and start our shelter. So in 2018, prior to that, the name was Saving Grace Animal Sanctuary. So in 2018, we did get our society status and we confirmed the name of Saving Grace Animal Society. Later on that year, we got our charity status, December of 2018, and we became a registered charity.
So when we first got into this building, it was actually kind of funny. We had just got a bank account. We just kind of hit the ground running, and you know, we're starting to grow at a little bit of a pace. But looking back, it's so funny. We put absolutely all of our money. We said to the man, like, we have 8 months rent in the bank. Like, we will give you all the 8 months rent. Because I said, no matter what, if we have the building, we can continue rescuing, we'll figure out a way. But if we lose the building, we've lost the ability to help as many animals as possible. So I gave him all the money and then just said, we'll figure out month to month, like how we're gonna make it work. Because I think at that time, like our whole charity had $13,000. And that was like, to us, like a lot of money. But we were putting it all into the building so that we could keep the lights on and stay in here and try and help at whatever capacity that looked like. And at that time, we were probably rescuing, I don't know, 25, 30 animals a month?
Yeah, I'd
maximum.
say that's fair.
Yeah, that's litters included, and now we're closer to 120-ish a month, which is overwhelming, but it's where we're at.